Bernie Sanders did not hold back on Kyrsten Sinema, which he shouldn't. Kyrsten Sinema turns out to be completely different than how she campaigned when she ran for Senate. And remember, we have videos of her showing that she wanted the filibuster herself gone. Of course, now that she's being paid by the corporatocracy, all of that is forgotten. Well, I don't think that Bernie Sanders is going to allow her to do that. And first of all, in an interview between her and Jake Tapper, she had quite a bit to say about wanting some sort of camaraderie. The left and the right, they're pulling apart and the whole works. That's not the reality, but let's go ahead and listen to this clip, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Senate Democrats kicked off their week with a big victory when Senator Raphael Warnock won his reelection in Georgia. But the week ended with a new wrinkle when Senator Kyrsten Sinema announced that she's leaving the Democratic Party to become an independent. Take a listen to the senator explaining more about her decision in a brand new clip from her interview with my co-host, Jake Tapper.
When you look at your voting record and the issues that are important to you as spelled out on your website, most of them are traditional Democratic issues, capital D, expanding healthcare access, abortion rights, LGBTQ rights, path for dreamers, and on, environmentalism, green energy. That sounds like a Democrat to me. No?
Well, I know this is really hard for lots of folks, especially in DC. But what's important to me is to not be tethered by the partisanship that dominates politics today. And I think Americans are tired of it. I think Arizonans are tired of it. What I'm interested in is working on all those issues that you just mentioned that I care deeply about and that I believe my constituents care deeply about. But I want to work on them in a way that is productive, that is free from the trappings of the pull of the political system. You know, the national political parties have pulled our politics farther to the edges than I've ever seen. I want to remove some of that poison from our politics.
Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Senator, first, you are an independent. She is now the third official independent of the U.S. Senate, joining you and Angus King of Maine. What do you think of her decision and also what you just heard in her interview with Jake?
I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on Senator Sinema. She has her reasons. Donna, I happen to suspect that it's probably a lot to do with politics back in Arizona. I think the Democrats there are not all that enthusiastic about somebody who helps sabotage some of the most important legislation that protects the interests of working families and voting rights and so forth. So I think it really has to do with her political aspirations for the future in Arizona. But for us, I think nothing much has changed in terms of the functioning of the U.S. Senate. The good news is that we now have 51 votes. We'll have a majority on committees. It means that we can go forward and start protecting the interests of working families and deal with the reality that we are increasingly living in an oligarchy where the billionaire class and large corporations control almost every aspect of our country. So I would hope very much that with this new majority, Democrats will sit down and start fighting for the needs of ordinary Americans.
So I want to talk about some of those issues in a second. But first, you were a very important figure on the campaign trail for progressives ahead of the midterms, as you normally are. I'm sure you're going to be campaigning for candidates in 2024. The outgoing Arizona Democratic Party official, one of them says that he expects Democrats will run their own candidate against her. Is that a good idea? Would you support a Democratic opponent against Senator Sinema?
I support progressive candidates all over this country, people who have the guts to take on powerful special interests. I don't know what's going to be happening in Arizona. We'll see who they nominate, but certainly that's something I will take a hard look at.
Does she have the guts to take on powerful special interests?
No, she doesn't. She is a corporate Democrat who has, in fact, along with Senator Manchin, sabotaged enormously important legislation.
That false unity that Kyrsten Sinema is working on is a false premise. Here's the reality. The policies that she voted against were policies that would have helped her constituents. The policies that she voted against are classic humane policies like, again, healthcare for the American kids, not the American kids, for the American people, family leave, all these issues, increasing in the wage increase, etc. All these things, as Jake Tapper said, are classic Democratic things that she normally would vote for, but there are critical things that she didn't, as Bernie Sanders said. She put a sabotage on Build Back Better, the second part of Build Back Better, which would have done so much for the environment, not as much as it should, but good enough, good start. So much for the personal economies of many of her own constituents that she just went ahead and said, no deal. We're not going to deal on that. And she thinks by becoming an independent, that's going to give her the wherewithal to somehow win over votes of the of Republicans in her states and independents. I'm going to tell you something. The narrative that's going out there by the intelligentsia in DC and other places is that somehow the working class is no longer democratic, which what they mean is the white working class is no longer democratic, which is true. They are a lot of times fighting on ideological grounds, on nativist grounds, etc. That is also true. But the answer to that is not to further alienate them. The answer to that is to figure out why. And I think a lot of us have already discovered why. And that is these people are scared of their shadows. They have been meant to feel by those who are trapping them that somehow the ascent of others, the others getting out of poverty, others actually getting equal access to success will be at their detriment. It is for us then now to counteract that narrative so that we bring these folks exactly where they belong, back into the progressive fold. But if you want to be a lazy activist, if you want to be a lazy analyst, you just go for the fruit that's already on the ground, which doesn't grow your base, it doesn't grow things. What we have to do is just that. Now it's not the time for less engagement. Now it's not the time to run to some mythical center. Now it's the time for us to engage all of us in the same socioeconomic conditions that in which the right is trying to blow apart, separate folks, and they won't know what's best. And by the way, when I say the right, I'm also talking about neoliberals, okay? I'm also talking about neoliberals who are complicit in what's happening today. But you know what? We've got the answer, and that is engagement, engagement, engagement. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.